As she said, my name is Katie Kapler. I'm co-founder and CEO at InScribe. And I just wanted to say a couple of logistics things before we get started. We would love for this session to be as interactive as possible. So I believe everyone has access to the chat in the Zoom toolbar. And anytime you have a question or a comment, please post it there. Danielle from my team is here, and so she can help answer some of the questions that are specific to InScribe, and to the extent possible, we'll weave them into the conversation that we're having today with Erin. I also want to introduce my co-host today. So I'm going to talk as little as possible today, and I'm going to let Erin talk as much as possible. Erin Perry is with us today from Indiana University Bloomington. And Erin is an experienced senior lecturer. He focuses on delivering real-world experiences to his students. Erin's got a background in computer forensics, management, human-computer interaction, social media, and public speaking, and has a Master of Science in informatics from Indiana University at Bloomington. So we're really, really excited to have him here today. And Erin's really going to tell his story about kind of the work that he's doing as a faculty member, the way that he interacts with his students, and how he's been leveraging InScribe in his classes to facilitate that communication. I thought before I turn it over to Erin, and I promise I'll talk as little as possible, I'm guessing there's a lot of people here today who maybe aren't familiar with InScribe or haven't used it before. So I thought I'd just give a quick little overview of the platform and what we do, and then we can really dig into Erin's use case. So InScribe, just at the highest level, we are a digital community platform, and our goal is really to help students connect with information and individuals that they need to be successful in their learning. So it's really as simple as that. And in the big picture, InScribe really works across the entire student life cycle. So access to information, access to people is something that students need no matter where they are in their learning journey. And InScribe is a platform that can really be deployed at a lot of places: onboarding, academics, career planning. Today, we're really going to focus in on the use case around academics and the use of InScribe in the classroom to facilitate those conversations. But just to give you a sense of how it works, our digital communities are available to students. So when they have questions or they need help, rather than send an email, they can turn to their community for help. And it's really about facilitating communication with peers and experts to get the answers that they need. And our goal is to help individuals and institutions build knowledge repositories that can benefit many, many students over time. So I'm not going to go a lot deeper on the platform. At the end of the talk today, I'll give you some information about where you can go to learn more about us and connect with us. But with that, I am going to turn it over to Erin, who's going to tell us a little bit about his use case. So Erin, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
And we can hear you. All right. So Erin, why don't you set the stage a little bit? Just tell us kind of what you do at Indiana University and what kinds of courses you teach and how InScribe came into your ecosystem.
I love that here's Erin.
I know, I should have drawn that out a lot longer.
That's leading me into make me step up my game just a little bit. So I got the pleasure of working with InScribe about 1.5 years ago, and I was asked to facilitate a few courses for the university. We were branching out in a different online environment. Many of you have heard about Edx before, and so that was the target group that we were trying to appeal to. And we wanted to just basically offer a few classes at first. These were called MicroMasters courses. And we wanted to see whether or not these would be potential students that we could then bring on as full-time master students into our program after having them going through several steps along the ways. And it was a very successful pilot program. But one of the things that we got hung up on early was some of the limitations within the Edx program. So we recognized very early, and I don't really give myself credit for this. I credit the web team that I worked with, who basically looked at the software and said, there's going to be a disconnect between you and the students at some point. So there's a one-way communication that happens where the students can send you a request or send you some sort of some sort of message, and it may get seen by you, but it might not get seen by you, because these tools have different rules about who has views about in what environments, and it's just another place to go to check all of these messages that seem to keep piling up. I see this 1484. It looks kind of like my inbox right now, but that makes me feel like a little bit of anxiety, because I'm thinking, if that's what I have to do with this group of people, maybe this isn't filtering out the people that I think it should be filtering. But the good news is, we piloted this project. It's been over a year and a half ago, and we had just tremendous success. So what we did was we went live with our course. This was, by the way, a brand new course. We had students from all over the world, every country you could imagine. So I think we had 38 countries recognized in our cohort. And what we said was, we want to set up an environment where everyone feels like they have an opportunity to contribute to the class, to get answers, and they're not necessarily bugging the faculty member or bugging one of the administrators, but they're actually able to communicate with maybe a cohort in the classroom and say, have you been having the same type of question that I've had? So that was the first real success for us, because for us, we opened this up all around the world. We had no idea how we'd keep up with communications with students in different time zones and different skill sets. And what we found was, based on what we had available to us in InScribe, it actually just organically kind of took care of itself. So InScribe basically said, here's what we're going to allow your students to do, right? We're going to take off the rules that most of these systems like Canvas or systems like, I don't want to bash Canvas. It's great for a lot of things, but these are systems that are set up to do something very specific. But I can't communicate in Canvas the same way I can in InScribe. So I need a tool that's interactive, that I can jump in on, but also my student can jump in on. Where else do you get a tool like that? Where else do you get a tool where I have the ability to jump in as a faculty member, but if one of my students may have more information about that, or may have more insight, or a TA, I rely on my TAs tremendously, they may jump over me and say, hey, professor, actually we changed this, but let me get the folks the most relevant information. So InScribe is built to facilitate all of those types of communications. And I'd never seen a tool quite like that before, right? Katie talked about a little bit of the ability to index certain searchable items. One of the things that as an instructor you've done over and over again is you have answered the same questions 50 times in one semester, but you probably answered them 50 times each semester for multiple semesters together. And these folks have figured out a way to, with artificial intelligence and a little bit of machine learning, to organize these topics almost as an intelligent FAQ. So if you think about that, it's when you go to use Google and you start to type in a search, as you type in a search, what's returned back to you is typically what they almost read your mind, like this is what I was really trying to ask for, but I really didn't know quite what to say about it. And that's what they've done with this tool. And so if I encourage my students enough to use this artificial intelligence that they've built into the product, it basically takes my workload down from, I'm going to say in a course, and I have about 5 courses that I teach. I would say right now my workload is probably 300 students at least. Most of them I don't see face-to-face. So 300 international students, domestic students, I can't meet each one of them face-to-face in a given week. But I can encourage them to ask questions once I post the homework to a tool like InScribe, and then let them start to work throughout the bugs together. As a faculty member, I get the pleasure of sitting back and watching where they're having their pitfalls, because I'm always curious about that when I write an assignment, like where are they going to stumble? And then I can jump in and say, you know what, time out, guys. I'm going to jump in here and create a little video that's going to help everyone out and move you one step further. And then you're back on your own, So from this point on, you have to actually take off from here. The ability to do that, the ability to have this interactive group, it reminds me a lot of sitting in a room with my students and just having them tell me, what are you struggling with? What am I struggling with? Okay, what are you struggling with? We don't have the luxury right now during COVID to sit down and open up discussion, which is what I normally do. I use this tool exclusively for that type of interaction with my student. I say, I need to know from you, whether you are in Iraq, whether you are in China, whether you are in Germany, tell me what you're struggling with, and I need to be able to help you. And my students jump in, give me their questions, and then we're showing a really good example here of my student. I think this is from one of my classes. They actually answer each other better than I can answer. So one of the things that I mentioned earlier to Katie, and I said, I want to brag on my students just for a second, because we get a set of students who take pride in the fact that they're getting our degrees. And I think all of you can relate to that. You can think, they've paid this amount of money to get X degree from us. And there's certain things I can't say to them, even though I think, well, I've been asked this question 5 times, but I know I've covered it before. My students have my back every single time. I can look in the InScribe tool and they will have my back in a artful, creative, thoughtful way. They will say, hey, Professor Perry talked about this last week. I think you should actually reference over here, and this is where your answer would be. As an instructor, I may be tempted to say, look, I covered this 3 times. I don't think you're paying attention, blah, blah, blah. My students simply pick up the workload. I mean, it's just one of those organically evolving environments that I have the pleasure to work in. And so this is an example that you're seeing on the screen right now. So students can help others answer each other's questions. Absolutely. So I'm oftentimes, like all of you watching this, you have 4 different classes. You have all kinds of obligations. We need our students, our best students, I should say, to jump in and help us out with some of these questions, because I have the ability to override anything I don't like that I see as a response. So if I see one of my students give an answer and I'm like, I really wouldn't do it like that, I can, as an InScribe administrator, I can actually get rid of that and tell the person, like, look, this is not how I phrase that. But my students, honestly, my good ones, bail me out almost every single time. So I think that's one of the biggest benefits of this, along with the fact that we can carry over this from semester to semester. So I teach a lot of the same courses. I'm in right now about 7 different courses. And for me to remember what the answer was on course number 1 versus course number 7, really difficult for me to do. But with a tool like this, I can ask the people at InScribe, hey, I flagged these 15 questions. These are 15 most, most often questions that I see. Can you save these and roll them over to next term, and then roll over the responses to those, because I feel like my students did a great job of answering those questions as well. So I don't want to ramble on too long here. I'm going to let Katty kind of catch up.
Well, one thing I wanted to jump in and say, so when we were talking earlier, I thought one of the great ways you described the peer-to-peer for your class was, it was like you all of a sudden had an army of TAs that were there to help you, instead of just the 1 or 2 that you had been assigned, and how high quality the communication and feedback from your students had been, which is really nice. And we did have a question in the chat about, what other types of moderation are there? Can you have people other than students answering questions? And so I'll just jump in and answer that really quickly. which is absolutely. So InScribe is designed to facilitate both peer-to-peer kinds of conversation and moderation, and then what we would call student to expert, and that expert really being anyone that you want to assign to that moderation. So in Aaron's case, it's himself, his TAs that are working with him. We have other communities where students are elevated to the moderator status, or depending on the use case, if it's not in an individual classroom, you might have advisors being the moderators, or coaches from the university, or even alumni that you bring in. So it's really designed to be flexible and allow you to bring together the set of individuals that are both in need of that assistance and can provide that assistance, in a really nice way. Maybe we'll pause there really quickly and just ask the audience, are some of these challenges things that you have also experienced in your classroom? So just curious, how many people are thinking, the communication tools in the traditional LMS don't quite meet my needs, or boy, I find myself answering that same question 100 times or 500 times every semester. Just kind of curious in the audience if you guys are seeing that, and how many of you have tried models that try to kind of open up the space for more peer-to-peer interaction and communication. So while people are posting in there and chatting, I did want to jump back to this slide, which is, Aaron mentioned that they have students from, can't remember how many countries you said.
325, I think.
Yeah, so like all over the world, right? All right, in this particular, and I'm sure for some folks on the session today, maybe your students are more co-located and maybe they're not in quite so many different locations. But anytime students are learning at a distance, their ability to connect with each other and with you is more difficult. And so one of the other great things that Aaron did in his community was create a space, to really understand there's the space for the practical stuff. I'm stuck, I have an issue, I need help. And then also created spaces for more of that sort of soft-sided human interaction where students could introduce themselves, say what they were there for, encourage each other. And I thought it was just really remarkable to see how students would start with a simple introduction, but as the semester evolved, you could see students raising their hand and saying, I'm worried that I'm not getting all my work done, or I need tips on how to better manage my time, and how other students would jump in and provide that facilitation, which, again, when you're learning at a distance, being able to create those connections seems really powerful.
Yeah. There's actually something to point out here. I just answered a question on the chat about how do students or how do faculty realize that they have a question out there waiting for them. And I think it's important to distinguish between the types of questions that we should expect as faculty members and ones that can be handled inside of the community. So I will often let these sit out there for a few days, even though I know the answer to it, because I want my students to jump on, and I want my really good students to take charge, because they love taking charge and answering those questions. So I love the fact that I don't have to think of this community as an email list or necessarily as a task item waiting for me to respond to. I can look at it as, you could ask my fiance, I say this oftentimes, I am going to wait for someone else to answer this because I want them to dig deep and I want them to, figure this out. And it's going to help all these people figure out what we were asking for, what we're looking for. And I think that's the best approach. In a global course like we're teaching here, we're teaching a closed course all over the world, and we basically have to be responsive and active with people from different areas, different time zones, and let people sort of get in and chat amongst themselves and figure out, hey, what do we have in common? What can we help each other with, and then move forward that way.
Yes, that's awesome. And I also love the point that you made about students alerting you to where they're getting stuck and where their challenges are. It's almost like people forget, if you give students a voice, they will actually tell you really interesting things.
Right.
And that you can probably learn to, provide information up front, which would clear away some of the barriers that they might run into over time. We do have a couple of other questions coming in. I did see the one about where people get alerted, and Erin, thanks for jumping into that. Right now, you don't need to be in the platform to understand that a new question has been posted. So we will send email alerts out of the platform to let you know about different activities that are taking place. There's a lot of customization that you can do there. So you can turn notifications on and off for various activities. You can also consolidate them into a single digest that will come once a day. And we are adding the ability to receive those notifications via text message. So if you would prefer to stay out of email, much like we saw earlier, but you want to be able to know while you're on the go, that will be coming soon as well. But every person in the community can kind of customize their notifications to match, how often they want to be alerted and the types of things they wanted to be alerted about. I also see a question about wanting to make sure answers are correct, which you spoke to really well, Erin, in terms of, sometimes students won't say things exactly the way you would have said it as an instructor. And so there's certainly ways to, restate what the student has said. The instructor can provide their own response. The flip side of that, I would say, is anytime a moderator answers in the InScribe system, it will carry a little badge. I don't know that we have any examples in here. I'll go back and look. But so it's an answer from a moderator. If a student provides a really excellent answer, the moderator can endorse that answer, and it gives it that same badge. So it's a really nice visual cue when you're in the platform. You can kind of see instantaneously what are the sort of certified answers, if you will, right? And yes, if you do roll your questions over term, there are ways to obscure the name, do a lot of things like that if you're worried. A lot of our communities are designed to allow previous students to remain active in the community.
That's pretty cool.
That's not everybody, right? If you're in an individual classroom, that might not be desirable, but sometimes having people who've already been through the process continue to be able to help students that are in the process can
I like that.
Advantages. Let's see. I'm going to keep moving, and then we'll jump back on. I don't know. If I miss some questions, Danielle, too, you can let me know. This was another interaction and actually, this was a really, really long post because what's happening here is this woman has completed the course and is now going back to reflect on her experience, and she gives 3 recommendations to students who are coming in on things that they could try or should think about if they're going to try and complete the course successfully. It was so long, we had to cut it down. But I don't know if you want to talk about this at all, Erin, and the how much you saw this happening in your classroom.
Well, I love to hear from this particular class. I always love to gather these stories and archive them because it's helpful. This is what you're looking at is the first class that my students take when entering the program. So we have another class that they take about 2 classes after this, which is, it counts the equivalent of this class, but the format and the difficulty level, it's just tremendously different than what they have in this class. So I'm always encouraging people in my other class to do what this young lady's done and say, please, please, please tell those coming after you how they will succeed in the class. Because once they read this is going to be their roadmap for how to move forward. I can give them all the helpful tips that I want, but mine is skewed quite a bit from my experience and my understanding of what the exam's going to be and so on and so forth. I love the student's perspective. So I think in this case, anytime we can empower our students who have gone through the process and succeeded to look back and say, I'm going to be a bridge. I'm going to be a helpful hand to all of you coming into this program. I'm going to tell you how to succeed. I'm all for that. And I'm 100% wanting to build more of these types of communication channels from our new students to our more senior students.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure none of us have experienced that where we tell, one of our children or one of our students what to do, and they're like, no way. And then they hear it from a peer, and they're like, oh my gosh, that is absolutely like gold. I have to follow that. But, yeah. So, and I thought it was just really cool to see, in that course, how many views this post got and how much. We didn't include the responses, but how many students just jumped in to say thank you. Even students that were in the course, had already done the course, right, saying, thank you so much for contributing this, and what a positive experience it would be. And I did see, just to clarify on that rollover process, we don't need to be involved in the rollover process. You can do all of that yourself. Aaron happens to have a really big job when it comes to rollover, and so he coordinates with us to take care of a few things, but it can be done as a self-service team as well. And I don't know if Aaron knew that I put this in here, but did survey the students. So these quotes are directly from the students, and they're a combination of things that came back in the survey that we did at the end of the term, but also just things that they organically posted in the course, just to give a shout out to Aaron and all the great work that he did.
I would not feel worthy of this at all. I would, no, I honestly, and I'm not just saying this, like, when I talked to InScribe originally, I said, well, the only way that I can know how to speak to the tool will be organically. Like, this is what I really, this is what I've experienced from the tool. This is what I love about the tool. And we sat down and had a meeting, and believe it or not, the presentation you're seeing is kind of, a fruition of that meeting. Because we just sat down and said, these are the things I love about the program. It does this, does this, does this. I didn't see this part, but this part is, icing on the cake for all of you that would want to use a program like this, because it does give your students sort of an informal way to give you feedback. And it goes both ways. They could say something hurtful here, but most of the time they're appreciative of the fact that you are engaged, especially in a course that's like maybe a global course. The fact that you are willing to jump in there and deal with them one-on-one in a really cool way to go back and forth in InScribe. I think most of them have found that to be really, really beneficial, and they look forward to that. Every course that we have, my students actually, we use InScribe in several of our courses, and they always look for that, and they have an expectation now moving forward. Like, this is what's going to happen in InScribe. We get these answers, and faculty will respond, and students will respond. So this is awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Aaron. You didn't have to say all the nice things about us, but we do appreciate it. One thing we didn't really touch on, and I don't have a screen for it, which now I'm thinking we should have put that in there, but is just the analytics. So just so everyone knows, the system does report back to you, so you can see, generally what's the activity levels in your community, who are the people who are most active, and what are they doing, what are the pieces of content that are most popular, and how are people reacting to that content? Are they upvoting it? Are they providing feedback or asking questions on it? So you can really get a pulse of like the health of your community and how it's progressing. I wanted to talk a little bit about just how you would get InScribe in your course, or kind of what the experience is of having it in your course. So InScribe can function as a standalone application. You can log to it directly and have all the features and functions there. However, we understand that having another destination for students is oftentimes a non-starter in terms of getting them to actually use it. And so we have done a lot of work to integrate InScribe really nicely into other systems, including the learning management system. And so what you're seeing here on this picture is, this is the Edx LMS. Everything above, the navigation at the top is the Edx system. And then below it, where you see Information System, MicroMasters, Enterprise Data Management, that's InScribe. And it's designed to actually launch directly within the LMS view. So this is what we call the embedded homepage. this same embedded homepage can live in, in any LMS. And you have that option. Do you want them to launch out to InScribe in a new tab, or do you want it to stay within the context of the LMS? And what we had heard when we built this was, not that it's confusing to students to open a new tab, because I think people are kind of used to that now, it happens often enough, but that it just takes them out of the context of learning and it's kind of distracting. So if we can keep as much of their activity and engagement still with the rest of the course around it, they're much more likely to get what they need here and then continue on in their flow of learning. So this is a view of, if you were to adopt InScribe, this is kind of roughly the experience inside the course that your students would have as well. I don't know if you have any theories on that, Aaron.
I think that it's hard to explain from that view exactly what happens from user experience, but I do know that when students go in there and they start to type in questions, this is a really cool thing that happens.
Oh, I think we froze. We lost you, Aaron. Here's what Aaron was going to say. I'll fill in the blanks till he comes back. So we have a search feature in InScribe. So if you know the question that you have, you can type it in and the system will automatically search to see if it can find the answer for you. Are you back, Aaron?
I'm back. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. I was starting to tell your story for you, but you go ahead.
That's great. I'm sure you would have done a better job than me. But I always encourage students to do that because it's like an intelligent search engine. So as I start to type, it's like going to Google and thinking, am I the first person that's ever asked this question? And that makes me nervous. But when I type it in and I realize, oh, others have asked this before, and it narrows down to my search results, that's what InScribe is actually captured here. So from an academic and from a course-specific point of view, they've actually allowed students to ask questions like that. So the algorithm that they're using is much like the Google algorithm that narrows things down by topic, and it's really, really great. Like I love that feature, and I can't praise that enough.
We always love to be compared to Google.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get on the good side. Thank you. Yeah, and I think the one piece that like was in between what I said and what you said, Aaron, is that search feature is integrated into the question asking flow. So as a student goes to post a question, if they haven't already searched for it, the system will automatically conduct that search as the question is being asked.
Yeah.
So again, it's really about creating a space that students can turn to, can find answers, but also really encouraging the reusability of content so that we can make the professor's life, the TA's life, easier and give you hours back in your day.
And you're removing a lot of barriers from the student and the faculty that we have to jump through normally. They don't know quite what to ask, and you are helping them ask questions that make sense because you're keeping this from semester to semester. So they realize other people have had the same exact question about this topic. And then from a faculty perspective, we don't have to get, inundated with the same questions. Or if we do see the same questions coming up over and over, it's a clue to us that we need to step our game up and do a better job of explaining whatever it is that we're not explaining. So it's like your built-in metrics that guide you from day to day. So I love that part of it.
Terrific. Awesome. Well, thanks for providing that walkthrough, Aaron. I'm going to just do a quick little overview for some folks on the call. If you were interested in using InScribe in your classroom, I can kind of show you that workflow of how it would be activated in your course. So first and foremost, InScribe is available in all the major LMS platforms. It's LTI integrated, so there's no additional API integrations needed other than just the basic LTI. You would need to either activate it yourself in your course or have your administrator turn on InScribe if you wanted it to be LTI integrated, just like any other app. But once it's been initiated for the classroom, I'm going to walk through the setup process from the Canvas perspective, just to give you one example, but this same general workflow would apply to other learning management systems. So you would come into your course, there would be some link to InScribe in the navigation, in this case in the left-hand navigation, which you would click. And if it's your first time using InScribe in that classroom, it's going to pop up a little setup box. And it'll give you two options. Do you want to create a new community, your first timer, that's probably what you're going to pick, or you could use an existing community. The existing community speaks directly to that rollover process. I want to continue to use what I had before. It's also really useful. We have some faculty members who maybe are teaching 3 or 4 sections of the same class. And rather than have a separate community for each of those classrooms, they'll use a single InScribe community that all of their classrooms can point to. So it's another way to make your life even more efficient and kind of scale up that answering process. So you would click that existing community. Now, assuming you're creating a new community, all you have to do is tell us what you want to call it, click the create button, and then behind the scenes, we will create a template community for you. We'll put in some recommended topics that we find a lot of people think are useful in a classroom context. Those are fully customizable, so once you get into InScribe, you can change those around or edit them. And in fact, this little video will pop up for you, which gives you an overview of InScribe and gives you some of those tips and tricks on how to get started. But it's really as simple as that. Once you've hooked the community up, it's now available to your students and you're off and running. So again, if you're interested, we'll give you some information at the end of the session. You can reach out to us. We can tell you how to get it going.